Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnu Pada Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Stoktarashita Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Thank you very much. Anantakoti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 4, The Characteristics of Rishabdeva. Text number 18. I'll just chant the Sanskrit and then we'll do synonyms. Bhagavatar Shabena Paririkshamana Atta Etasmin Varshena Kaschana Purusho Vanchatta Vidyamanam Ivatmano Nyasmat Katanchana Kimapi Karhichid Avekshate Bart excuse me Bhartaryanusavanam Vidrambita Snehatishayam Antarena Bhagavata by the Supreme Personality of Godhead Rishabena King Rishabha Parirakshamane being protected Etasmin on this Varshe planet Na not Kaschana anyone Purushaha even a common man Vanchati desires Avidyamanam not existing in reality Iva as if Atmanaha, for himself, Anyasmat, from anyone else, Katanchana, by any means, Kimapi, anything, Karhichit, at any time, Avikshate, does care to see, Bhartari, toward the master, Anusavanam, always, Vijimbrita, expanding, Sneha Atishayam, very great affection, Antarena, within one's self. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. No one likes to possess anything that is like a will-o'-the-wisp or a flower in the sky, for everyone knows very well that such things do not exist. When Lord Rishabdeva ruled this planet of Bharatvarsha, even common men did not want to ask for anything at any time or by any means. No one ever asks for a will-o'-the-wisp. In other words, everyone was completely satisfied, and therefore there was no chance of anyone's asking for anything. The people were absorbed in great affection for the king. Since this affection was always expanding, they were not inclined to ask for anything. Purport. In Bengal, the word Ghoda Dimba is used, which means the egg of a horse. Since a horse never lays an egg, the word Ghoda Dimba actually has no meaning. In Sanskrit, there is a word ka pushpa, which means the flower in the sky. No flower grows in the sky. Therefore, no one is interested in asking for ka pushpa or Ghoda Dimba. During the reign of Maharaj Rishabdeva, people were so well equipped that they did not want to ask for anything. They were immensely supplied with all necessities for life due to King Rishabdeva's good government. Consequently, everyone felt full satisfaction and did not want anything. This is the perfection of government. If the citizens are unhappy due to bad government, the heads of government are condemned. During these democratic days, monarchy is disliked by the people. But here is an example of how an emperor of the whole world kept all the citizens fully satisfied by supplying the necessities of life and following the Vedic principles. Thus, everyone was happy during the reign of Maharaj Rishabdeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, thank you for allowing me to speak today. Long translation. But the gist seems to be just a glorification of Rishabdev's expertise in caring for the people of the world. You can say kingdom, but as Srila Prabhupada points out, he's the emperor of the whole world. So everyone, all of his citizens, were fully satisfied because he supplied the necessities of life and followed the Vedic principles. So those two things aren't separate, of course, as we understand. Actually, it was being discussed yesterday also, that sacrifice is the means by which we qualify ourselves to receive the necessities of life. There's no use in Krishna supplying a population of rogues with more and more resources and necessities of life, because what will they do with those things? Simply harm themselves and harm others. So a civilization of thieves or roguish personalities, or those who are not at all interested in following the method of sacrifice given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, can never be happy. Srila Prabhupada explains this in chapter 3 of Bhagavad Gita. How can you be happy if you're a thief? You'll constantly be under fear of punishment by the government. So Krishna doesn't actually have to punish us. We're already in darkness. Krishna simply has to leave us here. That's our situation. We're constantly dependent upon mercy flowing in to maintain our existence. Right? It's like when they create dams for making electricity in some places of the United States, there are certain wetlands and things like that require like an influx of water continuously to maintain the habitat for the living entities there. And because human beings are trying to create a better economic situation by making electricity using the water that would otherwise be supplied downstream to these other areas, then those areas dry up and the living entities either have to leave and go somewhere else, or most of them are not capable of doing that, so they perish. So in the material world, it's not that we don't need Krishna. It's more that Krishna doesn't need us, in one sense. Or we can say it's not that Krishna doesn't care, but it's his intervention in different forms that allows this manifestation to continue to exist, and for us to continue to survive. Eko bahunam yo vidhati kaman. Krishna is the one who's supplying eternally all of the necessities of the living beings. So he does that in so many different ways. Here we're hearing about Rishabdev, who is acting as an ideal king to supply the necessities of a particular planet, and more importantly, as his purpose is to provide the example for how to, on behalf of the Supreme Lord, rule the citizens and satisfy them. Why is it important that the citizens are satisfied? The whole verse is discussing the point, and Srila Prabhupada spends some time in the purport discussing the point, that no one wants a will-o'-the-wisp, flower in the sky, or a horse eggs. No one wants such things because they don't exist. But we were just hearing that last night, I think in the Bhagavad Gita class, they were discussing that generally we don't have actually a deep understanding of the fact that this material world is temporary, right? Dukalayam ashashvatam. You're studying this section of verses or this chapter in the Bhagavad Gita. And still, we're going after temporary things, right? Asato vidyate no bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sataha. The tattvadarshis know that there's a difference between things that are permanent and impermanent. But to be a tattvadarshi is not a simple thing or a common thing. Yet here, all the common people, all the citizens of the world that's the statement that's being made, the citizens of Lord Rishabdev were satisfied. They weren't looking for, asking him for anything. They weren't looking for a will-o'-the-wisp. Nowadays, why do you think that video games are so popular and fantasy books? Because there's no happiness in the reality, right? There's no happiness in the reality. So then you want to go deeper and deeper into virtual reality to try to find something of value. And the books that are written on the future that I used to read, like Brave New World and, things like that, they were all based on how the society is going to go deeper and deeper into space exploration or, technological advancements such that they can have as much sense gratification as they possibly could want without having any repercussions for that. This is the vision of the future that people have. Nanotechnology, so you can somehow little robots can repair your body cells, while you're living, and then you'll never die. You can freeze your brain in some cryogenic capsule and wake up 50 years in the future when technology is better and they can provide you with satisfaction unlimitedly. This is will-o'-the-wisp. That's what it means. And people are wasting their time, money, and lifespan. Actually, people are doing this. It's not just some crazy fantasies, but people are actually doing this. These are actually some of the leading ideas in the scientific world, how to extend human life further and further and further, space exploration, etc. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada would criticize so much the idea of going to the moon and these kinds of things, wasting millions of dollars just for the spacesuit that they wear to be able to travel in outer space. $40 million or something. I'm sure that Prabhupada is making a joke in one class that he's giving, just for this silly thing that you have to put on so you can go somewhere that you're not supposed to go in the first place. $40 million. So this is the condition. These are symptoms of an unsatisfied society rather than symptoms of an advancing society. Yet we take it as the opposite. Or generally people see it as the opposite, or it's presented as the opposite. But it's will-o'-the-wisp, flowers in the sky, seeking in outer space someplace where you can live when you're already in paradise, when planet Earth is already providing everything required for human beings. So why? I didn't mean to make this like a talk on economics or something like that, but it seems to be going in that direction. So the situation on our planet is that without satisfaction, people are not only asking for things, unlike the citizens of Rishabdev, but they're demanding them. And they are willing to pay for them. So when there's someone willing to pay for something, there's always somebody who's willing to figure out a way to do it. That's the nature of our free enterprise world, influenced by the grace of the United States of America. So in place of progressing towards the goal of life with the satisfaction that should be provided by a good government, people are wasting their valuable human energy wishing for things that they'll never see. They're spending their time theorizing and researching and developing, and they die thinking the next person ahead of me will go a little further with this science. And in the meantime, the rest of the people who don't have some scientific role are simply engaged in consuming as much as they possibly can in some mode of nature, goodness, passion, or ignorance. Whether you can call it green or you can call it greed, whatever, but it's all in the same category of trying to enjoy. And when they become satisfied, frustrated in trying to enjoy in the modes of passion and ignorance, and they see that they're not going to be able to continue in that direction, then they try to enjoy it in the mode of goodness. Organic food, yoga class, etc. But all of these things are fluctuations of the modes of nature and symptoms of an unsatisfied civilization. And the result of that is depletion of the resources that the earth is providing, not only because we're over-consuming things in the world, but because we're not qualifying for replacement of the resources, or we're not qualifying for rejuvenation of those things. I drink this tea, traditional medicinals tea, and they have this little, they put a little word on the tea bag sticker thing somehow to try to inspire you or something. Like yogi tea has things on there. It says you are divine, or something like that. It's supposed to be inspiring. So this little thing today, it says renew. It's like a word that's supposed to make you feel good. Renew. It makes you think of green grasses and spring rains and things like renew. So that tea bag is not going to help us to renew the resources of the earth because they can't be renewed just by positive thinking and silly propaganda. They can be renewed only by the system set up by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which requires sacrifice to be performed so that the demigods provide what is required. Or not even if the demigods don't do it, the Supreme Lord himself, as Rishabdev, supplied rain for the planet when King Indra refused to do so. In other words, God is on our side, or Krishna is looking after us when we're engaged in the proper process of sacrifice. As he says, Yogakshema Vaham Yaham. So, and then when everyone has the necessities of life, now this is something that it seems foreign in the modern context to just think if you have the necessities of life that you'll be satisfied. And to an extent it's true. It is not just that if you have the food that you need, if you have clothing, if you have a job, then you'll be happy. Right? Because a lot of people have a job, a lot of people have clothes, and a lot of people have food. And they're still looking for more things. They still buy the newest flat screen television every winter. They still switch their furniture every 6 months. All these things are actually going on. I'm not just exaggerating. This is reality. That's why business is still flourishing in the United States. Why? They have money, they have a house, they have all these things. It's not just the necessities of life that are being supplied here, but as the verse describes, there's a couple things. The verse and the Srila Prabhupada's purport explain two important points. One is that the people were absorbed in great affection for the king, and since this affection was always expanding, they were not inclined to ask for anything. So as we understand, without finding the lotus feet of Krishna, even if one has some understanding that he is not the body, he won't be able to avoid coming back down to the platform of sense gratification. Similarly, persons who are satisfied materially, but they don't have a relationship with God, you can say, or the king is also the representative of God in the Vedic culture, so if persons had a loving relationship with their king on behalf of the Supreme Lord, he maintained them also in that way, not just by protecting them physically, but by protecting them by that relationship of fatherly relation with them. They accepted him as their protector, not just in a physical sense as we do in the United States. Oh, my government is protecting me, I have to pay taxes. But they wanted to serve the king because he's supplying everything for us. All of our necessities of life are being supplied. Not even excessive heat or cold. Srila Prabhupada describes about the reign of Yudhishthira Maharaj. because Krishna's system is regulating what's required for the citizens to be happy and progress towards the goal of life. All these things can be had. You don't have to build like a huge dome over the sky and somehow try to regulate the climate through technology. Krishna already has a huge dome over the sky, and he has agents capable of controlling the weather. But they're not going to do it if they don't have a good reason to do it. So that affection that they experienced by seeing that he is taking care of everything for us, so we have no concerns, and the gratitude towards him, which was always expanding for them. Therefore, they weren't inclined to ask for anything small, temporary, superfluous, because real satisfaction is satisfaction of the heart. While the body and soul have to be kept together, if one is happy at heart, there's no requirement for anything greater. Like there's the story of the cobbler. I'm sure you've all heard that story more than one time. But, he was satisfied just understanding how wonderful Narayan was, whereas this Brahmana was asking Lord Narayan, or wondering, desiring to go back to Lord Narayan immediately. So he had somehow the fortune to have a conversation with Narada Muni, I think, who he was asking, when will I go back? And he said, after so many lifetimes, whatever. And the cobbler would go back after one lifetime. Simple person. And the cobbler displayed his simplicity by saying, when it was revealed to him that the Lord was putting an elephant through the eye of a needle, he simply expressed, how wonderful is my Lord, that he can do such a thing. I can simply accept that very easily, because he can put a banyan tree into a small seed. So I'm sure he can also put an elephant through the eye of a needle. So when people can see, when they have faith that they're superior, starting with the Lord and everyone who is acting on his behalf, when they can see that the superior is able to do for them whatever they require, then there's no need for them to ask for anything, because they trust whatever I need is going to come. So what's the use of, working so hard on my own to look for ways to satisfy myself? I'll just act in my relationship with him. And that's what Krishna tries to give us assurance of in the Bhagavad Gita. Don't worry, I will protect you, in different verses. And that's our capacity to continue also with satisfaction in devotional service. Nischaya is confidence that Krishna will provide whatever is needed for us to make progress forward. And we can see that, if not in our own lives, if we haven't perceived that in our own lives, we can perceive that in the lives of Krishna's devotees, in the Bhagavatam, or in our current circumstances, our acharyas, etc., that Krishna provided whatever was required for them. And when we have that confidence, then we don't have to think so much, how do I achieve some higher level of attainment so that I can feel safe. Of course, we want to feel safe in Krishna consciousness. We don't want to feel that we're going to fall down at any moment. But we don't have to be uncertain about Krishna's mercy. That's the idea. We don't have to be uncertain that the person to whom we are rendering service is going to take care of us, because we can see that is the case. As Krishna is supplying everything for all living entities, he also says that those who are serving me, those who have some love for me, I have a special relationship with them. I consider them my own. I take care of them in a particular manner with my own affection. So with that confidence, one can avoid speculation, one can avoid fruitive endeavors, and ultimately one can achieve the real happiness of reinstatement in a loving relationship with Krishna in the fullest manner. And Srila Prabhupada states at the end of the purport here that in addition to the necessities of life, Lord Rishabha was satisfying the citizens by following the Vedic principles. Because he himself was situated on the path of Dharma, acting in his relationship with the Supreme Lord, and he was successful in his endeavors, others can have confidence and contentment, satisfaction with the understanding that if I just carry out my duties in the same way, then all success will be there. Whereas if Lord Rishabha, because he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, if he comes and he just starts displaying all mystic powers and, forget about acting like a king, I'm just going to walk around and, manifest things in a crazy way, not according to the Vedic system, it may give persons confidence that Lord Rishabdev is a very wonderful personality, but it wouldn't give people confidence that the Vedic system is valid and that they should be satisfied with that way of life. Therefore, the acharyas follow the system. Even a person who is very advanced, like Srila Prabhupada or other devotees who are beyond the stage of Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, still follow the rules of sadhana bhakti, because it shows this path is the right one. It works. I'm very happy. I'm satisfied. After 40 years in Krishna consciousness, I'm still coming for Mangalarti, and I'm ecstatic. And you will be too. So keep it going. Don't think that you have to do something different to be happy. And so by following in that way, they also satisfy the people, because we're satisfied when we know my position is secure, right? Anxiety is due to uncertainty about where I am and whether I'll be able to achieve happiness through the path that I'm following now. But satisfaction comes when one can accept, or contentment at least, that I may not have reached the goal yet, but I'm on the right path. Srila Prabhupada always gave that firm confidence that you are all like pure devotees because you're on the path of pure devotion. So don't be disturbed by what other people have to say about what you're doing. Just keep going. So anyway, those are some thoughts. Any comments or questions? Hare
Krishna. You were making the point that a material advancement is the sign of a dissatisfied society. And I was wondering, on books sometimes I try to express that to people, and it seems like they're in denial a lot of times, So how do we convince them of this point?
Srila Prabhupada's way of convincing them, which he purposefully did, was to create communities where they were not simple living and high thinking, where there was simple living and high thinking, where they were not so worried about. He would say, we don't require so many furnitures, like people do these days. Or, we don't have to go out and travel 2 hours each way to our job to get lots of money, etc. These kinds of things. And then Srila Prabhupada would express that they see that we have cars, and they see that we have food, and not only are we feeding ourselves, but we're feeding others. And they say, hey, these Hare Krishnas are fabulously rich. Where are you getting your money from? And he says, we're chanting Hare Krishna, so you please come and join us also. But that they will not do. So what is the conclusion. The conclusion is that one is not ready to surrender to Krishna. So that's the reason for the doubt. It's visible. You can see that persons are being maintained because they are dedicating their lives to Krishna, but it's not comprehensible because one wants to have the kingdom of God without God, and when God is there, then I'd rather not have the kingdom. I'd rather try to find it somewhere else. That's the idea here. So it's just the age-old phenomenon of thinking somehow that we can be happy without Krishna. The only way to change that, obviously, is to show by example that Krishna does provide, as was being discussed to some extent yesterday, that the modern idea is not the only valid idea, that there is other validity. It may be difficult to logically convince someone of this because it's the work of Maya to not allow them to understand it logically. But it can be possible to give them enough confidence that there is some substance here rather than just sentimentality. That this is practical. This is what Srila Prabhupada says in a lecture. I was thinking about this hearing the class yesterday. He said, Krishna is saying, grow more food and eat and be happy. Perform sacrifice. Receive the rain. From the rain come the grains. Then you will be nourished by that. This philosophy is practical. So understand it practically and preach it all over the world. What Krishna is saying is practical. He says again, this is the lecture that Srila Prabhupada is giving. So he wants us to understand that there is a practical aspect to these things. How can people have faith in that? They can see that persons who are serving Krishna are being maintained. So we serve Krishna according to the authorized process and let Krishna maintain us in whatever way, shape, or form, and other persons can see that we're happy and cared for, etc. And those who are not asura bhava, etc., can be convinced that there's value in simple living and high thinking. That's my picture of the thing. I mean, there's so many things that you can say, but example is the most powerful preacher, Achar. But Prabhupada wanted both things to be there. Scientific preaching and also exemplary lifestyle. Any other comments or questions? No? Wow, it's really early. Extra Harinam today? Maybe. It's snowing earlier, but okay. Glenn Prabhu. Okay.
One thing I appreciated in this text was that I struggled growing up with what does it mean to serve God, and there just was it seemed like more of a slavery than a servitude, and this really clarifies the enormous generosity of Krishna. But there was nothing in my life that said that with any clarity. So this has been. I kind of thought that it was that way and hoped that it was that way and hoped it wasn't the way it seemed to be presented. And to have this kind of satisfaction, it's just it's trying to be careful at the same time. I want to be careful not to be self-serving. If I do this, then Krishna's going to reward me with all the things I want, rather than I want to serve Krishna because Krishna is my Lord and Master.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the insight, and at the same time it brings a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's our surrender. Just serving Krishna because he's He'll take care of us. We don't have to worry about it. That's our development of that faith, is our surrender. Another thing that I saw here is that Prabhupada's saying, during these democratic days, monarchy is disliked by the people. But here's an example of how an emperor of the whole world kept all the citizens fully satisfied. So a democratic government doesn't allow for a relationship. This is one of the faults. It's a subtle fault in modern systems of governance. There's not a person that you are feeling indebted to. There's just a system. So how do you feel indebted to a system? Right? So it's like, the United States is giving me everything, so I'll sacrifice my life for my country. But that's such like a nebulous idea that you can't kind of hold it in your mind or pinpoint it. It's like, what is the United States? Is it this party? Is it that party? Is it, the president? No, it's not him because we elected him. He's dependent on us. So it's like a backwards way of doing things. Rather, the king is the one who is the controller and the maintainer, and that relationship is very clear. So personal relationship is very important in that respect. Not just to be a part of a system or something nebulous, but to have a tangible personal relationship with that entity that you are depending upon, so that you can feel gratitude and things like that advance one towards surrender and actual spiritual life. Anything else? No. Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. What time? Whew, this is